perceptions, formations, and consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure, neither increase nor decrease. Therefore, given emptiness, there are no forms, sensations, perceptions, formations, or consciousness. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, or mind, no sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind, no realm of sight, and so forth, down to no realm of mind consciousness. There is neither ignorance nor extinction of ignorance, and so forth, down to neither old age and death nor extinction of old age and death, no suffering, no cause, no cessation, no path, no knowledge, and no attainment, with nothing to attain. A bodhisattva relies on prajna paramita, and thus the mind is without hindrance. Without hindrance there is no fear, far beyond all inverted views. One realizes nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future rely on prajna paramita, and thereby attain unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. Therefore know the prajna paramita as the great miraculous mantra, the great bright mantra, the supreme mantra, the incomparable mantra, which removes all suffering and is true, not false. Therefore we proclaim the prajna paramita mantra, the mantra that says Gate, Gate, Paragate, Parasamgate, Bodhisattva.
Having chanted the heart of great perfect wisdom Sutra, we reverently offer the merit to great benefactor and founder of the doctrine, the original teacher, Shakyamuni Buddha, to the countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that permeate the myriad worlds, to the eternal three jewels in the 10 directions, and to all teachers of the true Dharma who transmitted the flame, that we may repay their compassionate blessings. We further offer this merit to all the Dharma protecting devas, to the Dharma protecting saints, to the air spirit of this place, to the temple protecting spirits. What we pray for is flourishing of the true Dharma, peace in the land, harmony among all nations, tranquility within the Sangha, wisdom and prosperity for countless supporters, continual turning of the two wheels. May we with all beings realize the Buddha way. Hey, hey, oh.
Amen.
School, and to all those who have died in natural and human-made disasters, including acts of terrorism, violence, political persecution, and more, and to Rhodey Adams, Dave Allen, Roten Lab, Suzanne Fairchild, Kim Mason, Joan Endrigo, Frank Ambrusco, David Chadwick, Raphael Alde, Cindy LeRae, Jeremy Jarvis. May they be serene through the transition we call death. We also dedicate this merit to Bettina Evans, Coral Mack, James Thompson, David Campbell, Betty Gordon, Gideon Ahadi, Ann Cole, Scott Moore, Frank, Angela, Michael and Amy Echterman, Toby Lewis, Christina LaRue, Karen Ford, Andrew Frankel, Russell Pop. May the heart of compassion illuminate their lives. We pray that all beings may prosper and all misfortunes cease. Zazen. Dharma kids may exit the hall. Sutra opening verse.
Start with names. I'm the Shuso.
Shuso. Kosei. Oraku. Ise. Genki.
Hojo.
Daran.
Sokai.
Sarah. Kat.
Leanne.
Lauren. Jason.
Kogan.
Myeobun.
Anu.
Susan.
Pranpreet. Jiko. Joshin. Esho. Sagan. Mandy. Ogyoku. Tojun. Emmanuel. David. Genpo. Onshin. Carrie. Nancy.
Ray.
Paul. Keishin.
June,
Sandy,
Christopher,
Moriah,
Barbara,
Dylan,
Karuna,
Myowan,
Shinyu,
Jessica,
Carl,
Colleen,
Sagan,
Jackie,
Corbin,
Yose,
Robert, Mario, Kenpo, Prentice, Jushin, Will, Molly, Olivia, Oni, Audrey, Shuho,
Ernest,
Delilah, Tom, KGN, Ian, Anya, Paul, Miyuki, Satoko.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So, one day, there was a rabbi, a great teacher, and he found himself at the end of his life on his deathbed. So his students started to come one by one to pay their respects to him. And eventually, his best student came and said, "Rabbi, I cannot let you leave this world without asking you, what is the meaning of life?" And the rabbi looks into the distance and says, "Life is like a river." And the student thinks on this for a moment and says, "Really? A river?" And the rabbi, looking the student directly in the eyes with his dying breath, says, "Okay, it's not a river." So today I'll be talking about spiritual friendship, about traveling together on the way. We'll be talking about it in the context of this Koan, which we've been studying together for the last several weeks, the 30th Case of Dong-Shan. So far, we've looked at a variety of themes in the case. We've talked about sewing and the Buddha's robe. We've talked about the flames of the world, the flames of phenomena as they appear to us. And so today we'll talk about the theme of traveling together. I have to say that of all the themes I've presented so far, I thought this would be the easiest. And it's turned out that it's actually very nuanced, and there's a lot that I want to share. But let's listen to the words of the Koan. One day, Shenshang was mending his robes when Dong-Shan asked, "What are you doing?" "Mending my robes," Shenshang replied. "How is it going?" Dong-Shan asked. "Each stitch is the same as the last," Shenshang replied. "We have been traveling together for 20 years, and you still talk like that? How can you be so clueless?" "How do you sew your robes then?" Shenshang asked. "With every stitch, the whole earth is spewing flames." As I've mentioned in the first Dharma Talk I gave about this Koan, the theme of traveling together is kind of subtle in this Koan. I think that the themes that jump out at us maybe the most readily, or the ones that are most obvious, are the themes about sewing, mending, in contrast with the theme of the world spewing flames. But right in the center of this koan are these words, "We have been traveling together for 20 years." I think it's kind of easy to miss right there in the sentence, the importance of this traveling together. As we previously discussed in the history of Dong-Shan, that Shenshang and Dong-Shan are Dharma brothers. They're very close. They have been on pilgrimage together. They've spent the last 20 years together in practice. It also turns out that it's possible that they were blood relations of some kind. There's some indication that they may have been cousins, or that Shenshang was possibly Dong-Shan's uncle, which I think is quite interesting as a possibility. In any case, they are spiritual friends. They travel together. They have what Jean Daido-Lori, in his commentary about the koans of Dong-Shan and Shenshang, they have face-to-face intimacy. Now, in a human life, there are many, many, many kinds of relations that we may have. In fact, I think that in the English language, we probably don't have enough words to describe the different ways that we relate to each other. So of course, there's the relation of family, right? This actually very complex matrix of relations, whether that's mother, father, uncles, aunts, grandparents, brother and sister, cousins, so forth and so on. This is one of the primary kinds of relationships, whether it's going well or not. It is a primary relationship that we explore. And we also have our friends. Let's call them for now like our chosen family, our secular friends. Right? We may be bound through hobbies or similar interests or excitement about the world, but our friends that we spend time with. Of course, there's also like our co-workers at the office. We may not get along very well with them, but we recognize as well that we're oriented together towards some kind of common goal. Maybe it's a bottom line that we actually don't care about that much, but we still meet with them day to day. And the list goes on and on and on. But the question is, what is spiritual friendship? What is particular about that orientation that might be different from family or friends or coworkers? Spiritual friendship, as I want to talk about it, has to do with a particular mutual alignment towards liberation. If we say that when we meet in the world, whether that's our coworkers or family or strangers, there's a tendency to meet in this way that is oriented towards ourself and the other person, right? We may tell jokes or talk, but we're oriented in this kind of myself and yourself sort of way. Maybe you have other responsibilities you're taking care of together, but this is sort of the general direct orientation. I want to propose that spiritual friendship, right, in our school, at least, in Buddhism, not only are we meeting as heart to heart, but we're meeting parallel, oriented towards the Buddha. Right? This is sort of the fundamental energy that we bring to a spiritual friendship. It's that we have mutual care and concern for each other's liberation, oriented to Buddha. And this is a different dynamic. It's a different possibility. It's very difficult, I think, to talk about this mutual orientation towards liberation without talking about Sangha. Sangha. And Sangha, as one facet of the triple treasure, right, Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, is profoundly important, especially in our school. In fact, we can't really separate Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. They're completely integrated, one jewel that is in three parts. Before I go any further, I should say that not every tradition of Buddhism emphasizes this face-to-face orientation in the same way. There are many ancient traditions of practice in Buddhism that emphasize solitude, or this notion of awakening that happens completely isolated. We tend to refer to that method as like the path of the Pratyeka Buddhas, a very specific kind of ancient, beautiful method, but also one that is in particular focused on this isolation from the world. We in Zen belong to the Mahayana school, this great vehicle, great big vehicle, which carries all beings towards liberation. And we see this Mahayana practice as very, very central to what we call a bodhisattva vow. Right? In the bodhisattva vows, the first vow we make is beings are numberless. I vow to free them. Like this great vehicle which carries the whole assembly across. When we read the sutras, we're encountered repeatedly by the incredible scale of these all beings within the assembly. So when we read the Lotus Sutra, for instance, those of you who have studied the Lotus Sutra, we see the first, 80 pages, many pages at the beginning of the Lotus Sutra identifying these innumerable beings in the assembly, in the Sangha of the Lotus Sutra, in which there are kings and queens of the winds of many directions. There are Raksha gods and goddesses, celestial beings. There's the human assembly. There's the monks and the nuns and the lay people, on and on and on. This incredible list of the assembly, the scale of the assembly. And this is such an important teaching when we look at the Lotus Sutra. You might ask, why would the Buddha emphasize this massive list as the first chunk of the Lotus Sutra? And I believe it is to reiterate the importance of this Mahayana vehicle, this great vehicle which carries all beings across. Very beautiful, and I encourage you, if you have not had a chance to look at the Lotus Sutra, it's almost becomes like a meditation to read this list of beings. However, when we discuss Sangha in this kind of cosmic scale, or even when we talk about the assembly of beings as including every being imaginable, right? Not only the humans and the gods, but also the insects and the flowers and the stone and the river as beings, it can become very abstract. It's almost as though the scale of that assembly is bigger than we can imagine. And so it becomes kind of an abstraction in our minds. When we talk about taking refuge in Sangha, I've noticed this over the course of my own practice. I kind of skip over a lot of beings to hold a certain ideal of what Sangha is in my mind. And maybe you have this experience as well. In your heart, when you hear this word Sangha, there's a certain community or certain idea or certain ideal that we hold. I take refuge in that Sangha, which I imagine and I like. Make no mistake, when we take refuge in Sangha, we take refuge also in the people who are sitting in the hall today. When I say to myself, or when I chant, I take refuge in Sangha, I'm taking refuge in Kogen, I'm taking refuge in Tojun, I'm taking refuge in Ise, in Kempo, in Keijien, I'm taking refuge in Myobun, I'm taking refuge in Nandi, so forth and so on. These actual people who you travel with, it's so easy to forget. It's even easier in some ways. Oh, I'll take refuge in the insects and the flowers and the river. The miracle of Sangha is the incredible rarity of having a chance to meet each other in this iteration of our human lives. And that is profoundly rare. Sangha is nothing if not a miracle. You know, the ancients tell us that to even be born as a human, capable of practice, requires kalpas, billions of lives spinning through the wheel of samsara to even emerge as a human. Beyond that, to even encounter the Dharma as a human may take another kalpa, billions and billions and billions of lives. So you can imagine mathematically how rare it is to walk into a room on Sunday morning and have, I don't know, these dozens of humans who represent a collective, unimaginable trillions of lives sitting together to practice. It is nothing if not a miracle. I think that the most precise instruction of the importance of Sangha comes from a sutra called the Upada Sutra. Anyu shared this with the term students a few weeks ago. And it references a moment in which Ananda, who is one of the very, very, very close students of the Buddha, his attendant even, Ananda approaches the Buddha and says, Bhagwan, surely good companions, good friends, good community, surely this is half of a holy life. And the Buddha responds, do not say this, Ananda, do not say this, for spiritual friendship is the entire way. This word, spiritual friendship, which I'm using and which is translated repeatedly, comes from a Sanskrit word, kalyana mitata. It's kind of a music, kalyana mitata. Hakuna matata. But the word we're translating into spiritual, this kalyana, has a more nuanced and complex definition. It relates also to ideas of auspicious or noble or wholesome. In fact, in sort of common vernacular, spiritual has a lot of other words in Sanskrit, but kalyana is the word used here. Mitata also refers to friend, but perhaps more precisely, something like an ally or a confidant. So this sounds good. Yeah, I think we can all get behind the notion of community and spiritual friendship and the beauty of the rarity of having community. But this does not mean at all that it's easy. There have been a few comments and questions so far relating a little bit to the, let's call it the harshness that some people are perceiving in the 30th Case of Dong-Shan, in particular this sort of accusation of cluelessness. There's something kind of harsh about it. But that facing each other is not always easy. Right? There is difficulty in Sangha. There's difficulty in community. And I'd say that one place that difficulty emerges from is the fact that we are individuals with differences. Yeah? Often when we evoke this word Sangha, we also use the word or descriptor harmonious. Right, the harmonious Sangha. We want to reach harmony We want to reach a point of harmony amongst this difference. And I'd say that this is a very important word to think about closely, harmonious. It's not that we say the uniform Sangha or the unanimous Sangha, right? Harmony in and of itself demands difference. Those of you who know music understand this, right? When we sing or chant in unison, right, it's like we're trying to become one indistinguishable voice, unison. Harmony involves many colors of voices. Even when we chant today, right, we're not making a single frequency. There are lower frequencies and there are higher frequencies. There are some frequencies that don't quite match. There are other frequencies that match in a way that's particularly beautiful, right? It's difference. The difference that you bring to Sangha is what makes it harmonious. And it's very easy to forget ourselves in a discussion about the sort of interbeing and mutuality and the oneness that we tend to idealize when we think about Sangha. But it's your particular story, right, your particular karmic condition that when brought to the Sangha creates this harmony. It's a practice also. Sometimes the notes come out quite dissonant and there's a lot of friction. But having vowed to take refuge in Sangha, this is what we have to explore. In a way, I describe this as like the horizontal Sangha, right? The Sangha that is around us, physical, in this moment, in this time and place. But I also want to talk about a Sangha that is vertical, like a Sangha that we take part in throughout time. There's a very important gateway in my mind that links us to this vertical Sangha, and that is the relationship to the teacher. Now, amongst the visible Sangha, the teacher has very specific role in our lives. You know, the Buddhist tradition comes out of a South Asian, Indian tradition, which really emphasized this notion of what is called Guru Shiyasha Parampara, which is sort of like the seeking out of a guru. Not even necessarily in a spiritual sense, but that the teacher, let's say you're a musician or an artisan, or you are pursuing some kind of skill, part of your job would be to seek out a teacher. And part of their job was to invite you into their home, into the workshop, and you would work to emulate the life of this person, to study and interrogate also the life of this person. And so the teacher has this role in the Sangha. In a way, we can think of the teacher also as a kind of guide. Very early on, I mentioned this image of trying to climb the wall of a cliff, right? And we're just sort of like pressed up against this cliff wall, and we're trying to turn a corner, and we can't see on the other side of this corner. But a teacher on the ground, grounded in their own practice, can help us see around that corner. And bit by bit, we make our way across this cliff. But I'm saying also that the teacher is a gateway to the Sangha of the ancestors. You know? That when we study with a teacher, we are introduced to this profound lineage. In fact, we venerate this lineage of teacher to student, to teacher to student, to teacher to student, across time and space for generations, connecting us back to the Buddha. And that in our study, in our current embodiment and life, that teaching blossoms again. that it's not sort of held in this linear time, but that the Sangha of the ancestors walk with us also in this circle of teacher and student, heart to heart, face to face. When we take on spiritual friends, we hold each other accountable as well. These relations are not simply the Hakuna Matata. They involve willing to be accountable and to hold others accountable. In this orientation towards liberation, in this mutual orientation towards the Buddha, we are not simply trying to make things feel good, though we could probably use more of that in this day and age, that accountability is a precious reflection back and forth. Next week we'll have a ceremony known as Jukai, a giving and receiving of precepts. And many members of the assembly have been working diligently and studying hard and practicing hard to receive these precepts. And as part of that ceremony, you will hear these 8 or 9 individuals receive what we call a Dharma name. Now, my Dharma name is Jakuen, tranquil circle. I was given this name by our teacher, Hojo-san. And one of the practices we try and engage in as fledgling bodhisattvas after the precept giving and receiving ceremony is, now I have to use this name, or I have to think about using it, or I'm confronted with the fact that I've been given this name. And often people ask why, what is the purpose of that? I'm still Hossenshiki. That's my Christian name, that name my parents given me. But I use the name Jakuen here at the temple, and in other places in my life. And one of the beautiful things about the Dharma name is that we call each other by our intention. I've set an intention to be oriented towards the Buddha. This name is a reminder of that intention. And it shows that you see me in that intention as well. So beautiful. I hope you can all come to this Jukai ceremony. I want to close with this encouragement. And that is, in all these kinds of relations, in all of the beautiful spiritual friendships that you will make as you travel together as a Sangha, do not forget you also travel with yourself. While you engage face-to-face with your family and your coworkers and your spiritual friends and your chosen family, you still face the person in the mirror. And wow, that is a hard relationship. It's a profoundly hard relationship. And now some of you might ask, Shuso, isn't it though that we are studying to go beyond the self, right? Non-self is an idea I've heard in this school. I would say yes, but there is a difference, I think, in the self we try and grasp and the self that emerges when we engage in mutuality of practice. Both in a way that I believe I found myself here in Sangha. I needed to step into community to understand the nature of myself. And also in doing that, I can begin to uncover the karma that creates this sense of clinging to oneself. I love the writer Martin Shaw, who's a folklorist who Ogyoku actually introduced me to. And he studies primarily Northern European folklore, and there's a beautiful text I would encourage you to look at if you're interested in this kind of thing, called Courting the Wild Twin. And it says that we're each born with a twin, a kind of dark twin that, for whatever reason, is cast away into the world upon our birth. And part of our job in spiritual maturation or becoming an adult is finding that dark twin amongst the Sangha in the world. And not only do we have to find ourself, we have to fall in love with that self. Doing that with Sangha is a miracle. And I hope that we can continue to study this together. I'm happy to receive your questions.
Shuso,
Yes.
why distinguish between family, chosen family, and spiritual friendship?
Surely there will be overlaps. I think I distinguish this for a few technical reasons. Ultimately, when we think about this great vehicle, which includes all beings, none of those individuals can really be separated and taken out. But I do think that we can work with the different relationships of our lives to reveal different facets of ourselves and our karma. I have tons of karma with my family that I see very instantly. I have lots of karma with my friends, which I sometimes don't see so clearly, right? And so the practice of relation reveals those different colors, you know, that ultimately the many diverse ways of relating are all teachers. You know, there's a whole set of Sangha which it's like people I just don't get along with, right? And they are my greatest teachers, actually. So I separate them in order to, for the sake of this talk, to sort of think about that diversity and the different teachers that emerge.
So, can you explain the difference, your explanation of the vertical versus horizontal Sangha?
Yeah. I think about this in a way, again, because when we're talking about like a cosmic Sangha of the Lotus Sutra, this enormous kind of assembly, it can be very easy for us to like kind of get lost in like, well, you know, there are actual people that I see, but then there's also invisible spirits and there's also gods, and so it can be very complex. When I talk about horizontal Sangha, I'm really thinking about like visible, like what I can see right now, these people in the room, also the flowers and the animals and the kids, and this vertical Sangha, this horizontal Sangha, which is like physically present. When I talked about vertical Sangha, I was talking about that Sangha which we can no longer see. In particular, I was talking about like ancestors, right? This sort of through time, this community which has practiced together and also practices with us, though it's harder for us to physically engage.
Shuso, is it ever acceptable in practice to reject someone in your life?
It will definitely happen.
How do you handle that?
You know, boundaries are important, like profoundly important to healthy relationships. And so there will be times where there's simply a boundary that needs to be placed for all kinds of reasons. You know? But I'd say that even after the boundary is placed or the rejection is enacted, don't think that you are somehow free of the karma of that relationality. Right? We continue to work with the people who are difficult or who have brought up difficult things in our lives, even when we have created perfect boundaries and they're absent. Right? This is sort of karma which is introduced into our lives that becomes part of what we have to practice through. So yes, definitely, we're provisional beings. We have to make
How does that
boundaries.
relate to this vertical idea of vertical practice or vertical, I'm not sure what you call that, as you're describing it.
So again, that idea of vertical Sangha, I was
Sangha.
talking about as like throughout history, throughout time, these practitioners. And I'd say, you can try, but you will never read or understand all of the lives of the practitioners who have engaged in practice through history. As you learn about them, you may find some that don't resonate with your life. Yeah. But again, that doesn't mean there isn't something to learn from them. Right? So exposing ourselves to the many, 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 many lives that have explored this way, we will find some that sort of light up and inspire us. We'll find some that we're challenged by and maybe would rather do without. But in both those instances, they are teaching us about our own karma and our own way.
Shuso, as I've been sewing my Raksu, I've been thinking about all the different layers of what this koan means, and one of them that has come up for me is the silk thread has a tendency to fray, and I feel kind of that fire sometimes as it's fraying, and I'm trying to get to utilize as much of the thread as I can. I don't know if you would know the answer to this, but I feel like the materials even have a level to it. Do you know what kinds of materials they might have been using at that time to fix their own robes?
Yeah. So India and also Japan were very cotton and silk oriented societies. So it's very likely that they would have been using either silk or cotton as they were able to find it in the world. But good for you. I'm glad to hear that you're working hard to utilize as much of the thread as possible to bring that attention to the sewing. And there are other sort of material histories that are quite interesting to study in this regard. Textile and thread were very, very precious in India and in China and much of the ancient world. So sort of what you're describing, this kind of intimacy of noticing the fraying, I think that's one way you honor that material. Time for one or two more.
Shuso. On the topic of traveling together. So we have the koan, these people are traveling together. Something happens in the discussion. It's energetic enough that little snapshot of their travels together has reached us. I assume they continued traveling together after that moment too. I don't know, but we can just assume that for my question. And again, I don't know, but I assume that it was not a perfectly smooth period of time after that snapshot too. Do you have any advice for either side of that interaction after that snapshot ends, as they continue to learn to travel together in the wake of that very energetic moment?
Yeah.
So energetic that it has reached us here.
I mean, most of life is very boring. And I think about, when I think about storytelling and narrative, or let's just say television, just to be simple, like when we create narrative, it's often to highlight these sort of most energetic points in a life which is full of basically nothing is happening. But it's like that traveling together, when you think about a road trip, for example, you're in the car for lots and lots of hours, and sometimes you'll see like a miraculous storm in the distance, and wow, I'm gonna remember that, you're gonna remember that, or whatever else, like the car might break down also, and it's like, oh, I'm gonna remember that as well. But most of the traveling together is basically the unending, mundane, boring reality of having to get up every day, feed myself, and be with people. That's most of what the koan is. These peak moments, I think, are important because they can resonate, the emotionality can resonate, but they aren't useful unless they're actually guiding us through this part of traveling together, which is the totally mundane act of knowing each other. It's like the existential juice of life is really in the day-to-day.
What was that last sentence you said?
The existential juice of life is in the day-to-day.
What?
The existential juice of life is in the day-to-day.
Well, of course, but I thought you just said it was boring.
Yeah, but it is also boring.
But look how you express it so
Heidegger says that the boredom is essential to Western philosophy in this way that boredom in modernity is where we have our first sort of crisis of identity. And his example is like you're at a party and it's fine. It's not like the best in the world. It isn't the worst. But you maybe have a drink, have an hors d'oeuvre, you sit down and you're like, I'm bored. What am I doing here? And that is like the beginning of existential kind of question.
Well, I've to ponder this a while about boredom. I mean, how would you describe boredom when you're bored? What's happening for you? Or not happening? It's maybe more what's not happening.
This is actually a beautiful circle back to tending life, right? The first Dharma Talk we were talking about is sewing, every stitch the same as the last, same as the last, same as the last. Right. It's not particularly exciting, but it is actually also the foundation of living, right? So like waking up in the morning, driving here, passing by the traffic on the street, those moments we can simply push aside as like, oh, I'm trying to get to the good stuff at Buddha Ai Temple.
Right.
All the rest of it is kind of extra, superfluous, or boring. But as we tend, we can see that, oh, to wake up in the morning at all, what a miracle. To be able to come, those acts of tending are boring, but they're also what we have to confront as the reality of life. And in that, there's a way that these very boring, mundane tasks also are our teachers. In fact, they're primary teachers. How we karmically relate to them reveals so much about the state of our heart and mind.
Well, I once said to someone that I was really tired of drying after, I love the shower, but after a while, drying becomes a boring activity. Not as interesting as the shower. And there are many of those little things, and if you live a long time, you've done them a long time.
Tajiambi Dharmam Saranam Gacchami Tajiambi Sangham Saranam
Are there any announcements?
I have an announcement. I recently registered for the teacher certification for Danceability International. This is the second time this will be the second time because I couldn't complete the first time. But cautiously optimistic that by the end of August, I will be certified to teach this style of movement, improvisational movement, which is inclusive of all brains and bodies, and maybe could even bring it to the Buddha temple. We'll see. So, wish me luck.
Good morning, my name is Molly, and I'm on the Connections Committee. And we've scheduled the Sangha circles, which is just amazing timing for today. And they're gonna start running in 2 weeks, one on Wednesday evening at 6 p.m., the other on Saturday afternoon. I think it's 1, but it might be 1:30. There are 2 spots open in each of those groups. So if you have been wanting to meet auspicious comrades in the Sangha, my email is in the bulletin from Friday, or you're welcome to talk to me afterwards, and I'd love to know by Monday night so that we can just wrap up logistics. Thank you.
My name is Carl, and today is the vernal equinox, and probably you saw in our bulletin, everyone here is invited during our kind of social time after our service to consider informally making your way out to the earth altar to do an offering of your choice. Thank you.
My name is Xin Yu, and regarding the Sangha, you can meet the Sangha or you can feed the Sangha. And I have procured from Evelyn her lemon bar recipe. Oh, yeah, I know. So I've made some copies of it, and if anybody would like to perhaps take a look at it and perhaps maybe bring lemon bars, you would at that moment become the most popular person in the Sangha. So see me for a recipe.
I have an announcement about the temple cleaning. So historically, the cleaning of the daily, like a regular upkeep of the temple has been relying on residents and also the people stay for breakfast, and we do that for half hour before breakfast. But now, probably many of you know that I'm the only resident, and we don't foresee that in the foreseeable future we will have more residents. So I think that offers opportunity for us to create a kind of new system right now that would involve more Sangha members to partake in this endeavor and this group effort. So now we're experimenting with a new system where on Tuesday mornings or Wednesday afternoons alternating each week, there'd be 1.5 hours that we designated for cleaning. So if anyone who has time and willingness to join us for that, we have a sign-up system online. You can access the link from the digest, I believe, and if you click into it, you can find whether there is available spot that you are able to take, and you are also more than welcome to stay for tea, breakfast, or lunch, whatever that makes sense for you before or after the cleaning. Thank you.
I would add that the efficacy of the practice of cleaning is beyond Zazen.
My name is Joe Sheen, and I just want to make an announcement about the yard sale. I know that seems like it's a long ways away. We just set the date for it, maybe the third weekend in June. And I know we got spring break going on and some spring cleaning going on. So as you do that, you see something you think might be good for the yard sale, set it aside. Also ask you that you ask your friends and neighbors and family to do the same. I know we got our Sangha right here, and it's this Zendo community neighborhood, the far west part of Eugene. So there's some people actually live in this, a lot of you live in this community, but a lot of us live in other parts. So please spread the word around there. And one new thing that we just came up with that's another way that people could participate. And there'll be lots of opportunities down the road there. We got 3 months to get this together. But one of the things we keep on hearing about is people say, oh, well, I've got, I'm moving, I've got this couch that I'd love to donate, whatever, but I don't have room for it. If anybody has an extra space in their garage or something like that, please let me know about it. And if it's available for the next couple of months, we always get people that are offering things, and we just don't have room to take them here right now. So if anybody has any space like that, please let me know. Thank you very much.
I'm Yoan, and I hate to make another announcement. We have so many, but I really want to express personally my gratitude and for this temple and this Sangha. And when I was thinking about it, I was just remembering all the people, all the efforts that went into all of us being able to stand here at this moment. This was a very, very rundown place when it was purchased. And it was only through the hard work of many Sangha members pounding and sanding and dragging things around to just totally transform it. And the room you stand in was a garage right now. And that was transformed probably to half this size until we outgrew it. And then Sangha members lent money, and we were able to, with Kogan's marvelous assistance, since he really built it, and we were able to have this. And as many of you noticed, probably walking in, the absolute beauty of those cherry trees in full blossom right now. And I remember when they were planted and they were, I don't know, maybe 6 feet tall, just young things. And I was just marveling looking at them today. And just remembering that this whole yard, the front, the back, the gates, none of it was here. It was a rough, lumpy, weed-infested, elephant garlic everywhere place. So it's just been transformed, with all the fruit trees that were planted, and the flowers, and the bulbs, and the paths that were put in, and the stone walls that were built. We're very lucky to have a temple carpenter here because, he's really the man that did all this build-out that I'm talking about. Well, not everything, of course, but the wood stuff. So, Hojo-san, I really, really feel this incredible gratitude for you having this commitment to the life of a full-time priest, which is not an easy thing, as you know. But it's essential for the flourishing of this temple. And my last gratitude goes to an unknown person to me, and probably everyone here, but not to you. Years ago, your neighbor said, why don't we go on a trip? Would you like to come to Japan? When you were probably 13 years old. And that begins the story. The carpet wheel turns from that, where you meet your wife and eventually Kiraboshi, your teacher, and he encourages you to come to Eugene and to have a space, a temple, whatever you can manage for the practice of wisdom. So thank you, everybody.
And it was interesting to me that you used the passive voice about the planting of those trees, because I remember going to get them together and digging those holes, and may it continue.
And isn't it amazing to look at them today?
Yeah. I had my parent, I know we got to stop, but my parents came down yesterday. That my brothers were down from up north, and we all gathered at our place up the street for dinner, and so we walked down. And my mom can't really walk very far anymore, and we just came to the cherry trees, and then so I was telling them a story of us planting them. We have a picture of a number of us planting them in 2002, I think, and thinking they're probably about 30 years old, and that's not so old. But a lot happens in 30 years. Yeah. And then she just kept saying to me, she said, "Oh, Patrick, my birth name's Patrick." She said, "Oh, Patrick, you should be so proud."